And welcome back to the show. Well, our nation's founding was based on the ideals of democracy as well as equality. However, there are several divisions that are happening in our nation, from intense anger towards certain groups, rising rates of mental health afflictions, and relatively easy access to guns. Across our nation, an outpouring of grief and outrage continues at the horrific violence and xenophobia perpetrated against Asian American communities, with a disproportionate number of attacks directed at women. A report from Stop AAPI Hate revealed nearly 3,800 incidents were reported over the course of roughly a year during this pandemic. While in New York City, there's also a surge in shootings and homicides at a level exceeding the grim numbers for 2020. Data reports on March 28th that 245 shootings, which is an increase across the five boroughs of nearly 50% over the past year. I'm pleased to be joined on the Social Justice Forums by Councilmember of New York City District 14, Fernando Cabrera, who is very much front and center on the front lines with this. And Councilman Cabrera, good to have you here on the Social Justice Forums.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a joy.
Yeah, and I wish I could have you at better times, right? But the fact is, they are what they are. And when we look right now, we're looking across New York City, and New York City is increasing with the issue of Asian hate and violence against Asian Americans and Asians overall. Give me, first of all, as a council member, your sentiments on the Asian hate that we're seeing.
Well, actually, and thank you for that question. It's actually something that is very personal to me. What a lot of people may not know, my daughter-in-law, she's Asian. She's originally from Thailand, and my grandson, he's half Asian. And so I have to be honest with you, I'm worried. I'm very concerned every time she goes out into the streets because of the branding. We had a previous administration that, and I'm so afraid with branding when people begin to brand scapegoat and brand a certain group of people uh, for the ills of society, it never comes out right. And what we need to do, we need to stand together in solidarity with our Asian brothers and sisters and say, we are not going to tolerate that, not in New York City.
Yeah. And when we look at, we see what's happening across New York City, it's a microcosm of a macrocosm, right? We're seeing this happen all across the nation. Talk to me about what you'd like to see in terms of resources and things going towards helping out with Asian hate.
Well, we need to up our educational effort. All racism is based on ignorance. Let me say that again. All racism is based on ignorance. And in that ignorance promulgates fear. And until we start bringing down those arguments that people have in their mind and shift the culture, a culture which says we value everyone, a culture that says we will honor everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of who they are. We're going to continue to see this, and this is why I believe at the very root we have to address this issue. And at the same time, we need to make sure that those who trespass uh, the boundaries of safety that everyone is due, that we see true justice taking place for those who are being attacked. And you see this awful attack. Somebody can just be standing, Asian brother or sister, and uh, just get hit in such a violent way. Uh, and we need to have justice for them, but we got to get back to the root of the problem, and that's going to take some funding. That's going to take some intentional strategies to be able to start reaching. And let's have a long-term plan here as well. Start reaching our young people because this is something that people have learned wrongly, and we need to short circuit those efforts by those who would try to promulgate hate.
Yeah. Walk me through a little bit about what we're seeing across New York City. Obviously, as I spoke in the lead, there are these increasing numbers when it comes to gun violence. I want to first get your response to that because at one point it seemed as though we were doing a little bit better, but then the numbers continue to increase. Do you attribute this increase possibly to what we're experiencing in the pandemic?
Well, that's a loaded question. Let me break it down. We right now, for some reason, we're acting like we don't know what to do. Uh, Up to last year, we were doing phenomenally well. We were the safest, largest city in the United States. Then the pandemic hit, and the pandemic is one of the big reasons why we're seeing the crime spike up because of poverty. Poverty is often the catalyst for crime to spike up. Not always, but often. And so we got to get to the root of the matter of the problem. And that's why we need to expedite this economic recovery. In the meantime, let me just say this. Myself and another council member, we were responsible as being the co-chair of the Gun Violence Task Force. Back in 2004, watch this, in the middle of a recession, to pass the only initiative during that time to start the Cure Violence program. We started with $6.7 million. This last year, we were up to 27 million. That was the main reason why we saw crime go down. We realized we can't deal this just with police force. We have to get young people help. And what that program did and continues to do is to take a credible messenger, former gang members, crew members who understand this street, who have a report with them, work with them. They're out every night between 10 o'clock at night to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They serve as interrupters to stop any form of retaliation that takes place whenever there's gun violence, provide jobs. And right now, we just infused another $4 million to provide jobs for young people who are involved around this circle. Then I call upon the first deputy mayor and the mayor during the hearings to double the amount of funding for gun violence. We know it worked before. We know that it is helping right now, but it's not sufficient due to the unusual and the anomaly of a problem we have right now because of the pandemic. I'm happy to tell you that for this summer, they're not only going to double, but now we're going to triple the amount of funding so we can help the young people find a better way.
Yeah. When we talk about young people, obviously we know that a lot of them uh, really struggle with opportunities. Summer youth employment program, summer jobs program, those things are like cut. And so it puts people back out on the streets, creating that access to weapons and access to guns. We've heard a lot about the gun buyback program, how effective it is. From your perspective, is a gun buyback program effective in getting some of these guns off the street?
Absolutely, 100%. They have proven to be very, very effective. What we need is more funding. We need the DAs to put more funding towards it, and also the city of New York. The DAs can't do this by themselves. And may I say that they should use more often the houses of worship, asking people to bring their guns to the house of worship. Have a system, of course. It won't happen by chance, a particular day, and people be able to bring their guns to a house of worship. The police uh, will be present, and somebody from the DA's office, and to be able to get these guns, and they'll get some kind of compensation. This is the quickest way to get, in a safe manner, guns off the street. Guns off the street means less shooting.
Right. But you hear some critics say that, okay, you'll get the guns off the street. There'll be some guns that come in through the gun buyback program, but they may not necessarily be the ones that are associated with crimes. And so is it an effective measure by way of that?
It certainly is. Look, I'll give you an example. Right here where I live in Fordham Hill, we had a parent who had a gun for 10 years, uh, which is surprising because Fordham Hill is very, very safe. Uh, and and the son ended up getting the gun, 8-year-old son, and ended up shooting himself. And thank God that he lived. But we have a situation where a child was in critical situation, almost died, uh, and and thank God he made it through. But and also the other thing to think about, when you have these guns at home and somebody breaks into your home, they're likely to escape. Young people that are living at home, they could get in an altercation in the street. They know there's a gun at home. They go, they get it, and start shooting people. But the reality is that we also have many people that at one time were in the life, or and they say, you know what, I don't want this gun anymore. Instead of selling it to somebody else, their conscience is pricked, and they say, you know what, let me give it back to the buyback program. That way, it doesn't end up in the wrong hands.
Yeah. That buyback program, of course, is something that's happened here in the borough of the Bronx. We have seen, and we have covered that before. But where are we getting these guns from? Are you hearing anything as a council member? I know that you're in committees. I know that you're in sessions. We're hearing that, that's Pennsylvania. We're hearing places like Ohio. They're coming up from the South. Can you give us a little bit more information as to what you're finding out about where these guns are actually emanating from?
They're coming from states. As a matter of fact, we have the strongest uh, gun laws in the nation right here in New York. The problem is, as you stated, they're coming from other states, especially from Virginia, North Carolina, where laws are very lax. I lived in Virginia. Very easy to get a gun. I mean, it's too easy for somebody to be able to get a gun. And there are people who want to make a profit out of that, be able to buy guns over there. But it's not just in a gun store, but it's these guns. We get a lot of guns also. They come out of this flea market type of gun sales where you have 100 vendors coming in, where there is no background check, there is no check whatsoever because they're secondhand guns. And we need the federal government, Congress need to look at that very closely, because unless we short circuit the amount of guns that are coming into, for example, New York City, are we going to continue to have this gun shooting? We just had 3 gun shootings this last weekend, 3 in the Bronx. Somebody got killed. We gotta say enough is enough. There has to be a surge of this righteous indignation that says we are not going to tolerate this, and it's going to take the whole community together to say, and government to step up and put a break before this becomes very chronic. I'm very concerned about this summer, very concerned about this summer, and if we don't do something, we could have a different type of epidemic, a crime epidemic.
You led into my next question, which really was coming up. I mean, the weather is getting warmer. We know traditionally when the weather gets warmer, that's the opportunity to see a lot more action out there on the streets. And unfortunately, a possibility to see increased gun violence. You talked about being very worried, very concerned. I want you to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm very concerned because number one, because we do have masks and people should be wearing masks right now, it's easier for someone like we saw in one of our parks where 2 young people were wearing masks. They're harder to identify. They started shooting into the park where there were young people there. Thank God nobody got hit. But it's a lot easier now for somebody to hide and conceal their face. This summer, because there's been this sense of pinup. There is a feeling, and I'll tell you what people tell me in the streets of they feel like there's lawlessness. Some people feel that, and then you have the police force, right? They're saying we're not getting the level of support that is due to them, right? So when you start putting that combination, and you still have the level of unemployment that we have right now, that is a cocktail, a potential cocktail for trying to surge. And this is why I'm so glad that we were able to have the commitment. You mentioned the youth, some youth employment. We have secured 70,000 jobs for young people. And then when you add on the Cure Violence program and triple the amount of the work that is going to take place, I'm hoping that that's going to be able to do the work that is needed. So this summer will not be a tragic summer. I just did a funeral. You know, I'm a pastor, and I just did a funeral last Saturday, the Saturday before, of a young lady who got shot right here in the middle. She young. She never got to see the best years of her life because somebody had a gun and they were in a small party. The gun went off and she's dead. There with the mom, broken, uh, devastated. No mother should have to bury their children because uh, somebody decided to use a handgun. It's not a toy. This is not Call of Duty. Uh, Lives are at stake here. And I'm calling upon every parent that is watching right now. They need us more than ever. They need us to get involved with our children, and especially the men. I need the men to step up. Young men need mentorship, and this is why at the Youth Detention Center, I started a mentorship program that's been going on for a couple of years. And watch this: every young person that got a mentor from day one, none of them have returned back. You know what we're lacking? More mentors. And so when we step up, we are able to provide that level of mentorship and instruction and expose young people to a better life. They will respond. Young people have dreams. When I'm around them, I see the dream. They don't want to be in that life. They tell me, say, Cabrera, this is like a business for us. I need something better. And that's why I'm glad that we're creating next steps for them through these programs.
So you do feel as though mentorship does make a difference?
100%. Every data of every research has shown is one of the most effective way of doing it, whether it's through the cure violence program, whether it's through detention. And we have not spoken about prevention. We need to do more prevention program. That's why most of my discretionary funding goes into doing prevention program. I was brought out with the idea, let's get our children so tired doing good, they'll be too tired to do bad. That's the way we were raised, right?
Right.
I was like, my friends would say, "Oh, let's go do something." I'm too tired, man. you know, and we know that sports help. We know that extracurricular activity help. This should be an opportunity for every kid after school. We should have after school programs in every single school at different levels of the interest to keep our young people doing the right thing and providing a good path in life.
Yeah. Before we go, I just want to have the opportunity to ask you to share a little bit more about Fordham, your district, Fordham Road. You mentioned about jobs and businesses. Talk to me about what you're anticipating now that the city's seeing some reopening. I know a lot of businesses on that Fordham Road corridor had some great concerns. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, our businesses were hit at different level. We had the pandemic. We had the looting that took place in Fordham Road. That affected it. We were able, the next day after the looting, I was able to get the mayor to provide public-private funding for all of those businesses. That was able to help some of them. But look, the pandemic has hit not just Fordham, it hit the entire Bronx. We have lost close to 1/3 of our businesses. This is why I believe that BLDC, the Bronx Overall Economic Development, is crucial for the recovery, to infuse money to create new businesses and to help those who are here already. Small businesses services fail us during the pandemic. We only got 1% of all the loans that they were giving came to the Bronx, meaning 99% of those low interest loans end up going to other boroughs. And I've talked to the mayor about this. We have a commitment that there's going to be a shift taking place. So we're going to hold them accountable to that because we need economic recovery like never before. We need to remove all this red tape. By the way, I have two bills, and one of them is the business amnesty bill that basically will remove all of the fines of any fees that they need to pay the city of New York for penalties, and give them a 25% discount if they're able to pay in full. That will bring in $150 million into the city and at the same time bring relief to the businesses. It is such an awesome plan that Crane's business editorial has endorsed it. And also, when it comes to drivers, amnesty program as well for those who owe they owe through the DOT any fines, and that way they could get the same kind of recovery, and the city is able to capture also funding that we so desperately need right now. So this is a win-win situation for everyone.
We'll continue to follow that. And I want to thank you for coming here on the Social Justice Forums. We're going to be looking at the situation with guns as we get towards the summer. Hopefully, it won't be as bad as some people project. We're looking for a safe, healthy, and more progression coming out of this pandemic. Councilmember Cabrera, thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums.
Thank you.
All right, taking a quick break. We do have more on this show. We want you to don't go anywhere. We're going to continue coming right back in a few.